What's up, YouTube? So I wanted to talk about a certain mention that I feel part of the Mortal Kombat crowd, or at least the casual crowd, or someone out there. My nephew, we play a lot of Mortal Kombat, and I just wanted to mention this particular kind of philosophy that we both share in Mortal Kombat 1. But first, I wanted to kind of show you this video clip from Maddoggames. He mentioned something about cameos, but let's just cut right to it.
The next common mistake a beginner makes is not using your cameo to its full potential. There is a major strategy for using cameos, and that is to either cover your main character's weakness or amplify their strengths.
Okay, so let's pause right there and let's go back to what he says.
There's a major strategy for
you using cameos. Okay. He just said, for one, it's to cover your main character's weakness. Let's concentrate on that. And then?
Or amplify their strengths.
Okay, this is part of where I feel like there is a huge hole in the cameo system already, and in Mortal Kombat 1, that differs very strongly from the previous MKs. We're talking about MK9, X, and 11. What I was talking about last night with my nephew is the fact that the game feels so gimmicky and reliant upon the cameos that you don't have space to kind of appreciate your own character, your main character. And it got to the point where at the end of the day, we've both agreed, it's like, I just wish that they fleshed out the characters in general, like the main roster, like give them more options on their own so they don't have to be reliant on the cameos and we don't have to fill in the holes that they provide us. And then at the same time, you know, you become really efficient with just your roster based character in all aspects that you can kind of zone in on. Then have a separate cameo mode. It could have been like two competitive kind of tunnels that this game would have provided. There is something to be left to be desired, and it also limits the characters themselves. They feel very limited in what they can do. That's not to say that the entire roster is that way. Probably a stacked set of characters that just feel so overwhelming. And granted, I want to make a comment and say that I'm not the best Mortal Kombat player. I'm not a professional player. I don't play in tournaments and all that stuff, but I play to kind of find out the systems that are in place, like how deep has it gone in each of the Mortal Kombats. I felt like some of what we were used to has been very limited, but I feel like in MK11 it brought everyone back to a good neutral ground. I'm really a big proponent on neutral. I love neutral. Where I feel as if in MK1, when you stack a base roster with another cameo that can potentially just infinitely trap you, I've never been a fan of infinite traps, and I guess that's just my newbiness or my lack of skill, and that's fine. You know, people can call me out on that. That's fine. I will admit to that. But it makes it less fun when you're sitting here holding the block button the entire time, having to guess for extended periods of time. I don't want to stay trapped in frames forever. I feel like that is just so unbalanced, and it makes me feel the holes even more. So some people would say that this is a challenge that a lot of professional players will be up to the task to take on. But I am not a professional player. I'm highly casual. But in a casual realm, I felt like I had a little bit more competitive spirit going into online mode in MK11. Having the cameo system makes me feel like it's just been so gimmicky, and it's been really lackluster in the base roster themselves. Like Ashra, for instance, like her mix-ups are not as present as in someone else's situation. For instance, like a Kenshi character that you're just sitting there taking traps by Sento and your cameo, and then Kenshi himself. You can't do that with Ashra. You can't stay in frame trap. But that 1-to-1 ratio makes it feel like Ashra has a hole in her game versus what Kenshi had. Kenshi is completely safe once he uses Sento and once he locks you in. I didn't feel this feeling when I went into Mortal Kombat 11. I didn't feel like there's holes. I didn't feel like, okay, wow, like this is just a big old super frame trap. I didn't feel that at all with MK11, or minimally. I felt it minimally to the way that it's like, oh, okay, I just need to kind of practice that particular frame trap with that character versus multitasking with the Kenshis and stuff. So I don't even want to bother to attempt because it just feels so gimmicky. It's in my opinion that I don't think any of these characters on the base roster should have any holes. And they shouldn't have any holes for the cameos to fill in those gaps. They shouldn't have that. They should just be pretty good on their own to start. And if you want to go have some extra fun on top of that, then you go to the cameo mode instead and not just be forced to have to play cameos, right? So like in the reason why this works for like Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is because you would be able to switch into those characters as well. And guess what? And in Marvel vs. Capcom 2, all of your assists, all of them were playable. You can switch into those characters fully fleshed out to their max potential or whatever. You had that sense of like, okay, this character is not working. Let me switch to my secondary character and try that instead. That gave it a flexibility. That gives it the options. I don't want to resort to using Serena and trapping people in frames with Serena's multiple projectile throw. I don't want that because to me it feels so gimmicky. So it's almost like everyone's fixated on the same cameos, and again, for what? Because there's probably a common hole in every single character that we're feeling here. So again, look, I'm not good at the game yet, but I feel like I've played enough of it, right? I think I've got like 50 hours, right? I played enough of it to gather a sense of that, oh, why does this character feel so limited? Or why does it feel like this character is missing so much to their base game, right? And that's because the intended philosophy behind cameos is they're there for a reason, and you got to use cameos. And it just doesn't sit right for me in a Mortal Kombat game. I would have rather the Marvel vs. Capcom style, even if it was to just cut the cameos in half, right? Cut them in half, and then take the second half of the cameos, like I miss Kano, right? I miss Kano. It would have been cool if we can have Darius in action for real, right? And like, I don't need a Scorpion and Sub-Zero and Kung Lao. I don't need these guys because they're already on my base roster, right? I would have preferred to have another 4 or 8 characters fleshed out in the base roster. And then, instead of having the cameo system to kind of call out like that, just use the base roster in its entirety to allow assist moves and to allow to call in to switch out characters. If I can call in another base roster member and still use back-to-back like assist attacks, at least you can potentially open up other areas of opponent's defense versus this, right? There are other characters they feel more fleshed out versus other characters on the base roster. So someone like Melina, to me, she feels like classic Melina, right? And she has the combo potential to do things on her own. Just on her own, it feels like she has a lot of combo potential. Someone very similar to that, Natara. When I've gone against some really crazy Natara, she's just super stacked on her own to perform combos. And you really feel those holes when you start to use other characters like Ashura or like Tanya. When you see Tanya when you play Ashura and Tanya, and then you see the combo potential that other characters have without using cameos, then you start to feel those holes, and you start to wonder, you start to feel uncomfortable with those holes. It leaves wanting more from the base roster, and I just wish I never had that feeling in the first place. I want to be able to pick up a character, learn the ins and outs, and understand that character is so kind of like, alright, there's a balance to the base roster. When I felt that in MK11, I felt like such a huge balance in that game. And I don't feel that same balance on the base roster system alone again. Final freaking thought that I'm landing on again when I talked with my nephew is that I just wish that they balanced and fleshed out the base roster in its entirety so that the 1v1 felt really good, right? First and foremost. And then you have a cameo mode. Because it doesn't feel that way. It feels like you need to use the cameos to plug in and fill in the gaps of your base roster. In my opinion, that's not right, you know? With that said, I think I'll stop here because I continue to rant, but it's frustrating. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.